Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. The time has finally arrived for you to learn one of the most shocking truths of mathematics. At least it was for me when I learned it back when I was your age, or close to it. And that is that ever since you start learning mathematics in the very first grade, even in kindergarten, you are told a tiny little lie. You are told that a subtraction like this, 2 minus 9, cannot be done. You're told it is impossible. Why? Because 9 is more than 2. So if you have, for example, 2 pencils, you can't give me 9. Well, no, you can't. But you could give me the 2 you have and then owe me another 7. So what are we talking about here? What is going on? What we are talking about is negative numbers, a new and different type of number that changes basically everything you know about addition and subtraction. So immediately you might have the question, well, why didn't we just learn this in the first grade? Why do we have to learn something that isn't true and then unlearn it? And the answer is that subtraction is already very complicated for a first grader and maybe even a second grader. So to add negative numbers into the mix would make it way more confusing, as you are about to find out. And so we simply tell that little lie, we learn our subtraction the way we're supposed to, and then we come back and introduce negative numbers. So today we are going to talk about what negative numbers are, how we compare them, because yes, we can compare them. We can do with them everything we do with normal numbers, the numbers we know up until now, and then how we add and subtract them. So let's get started. First of all, what they are. First here you can see all of the numbers that you already know, right? The whole numbers, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and this continues 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 100, and then 1,000, then 4,000, then 50 billion, and then 500 trillion, and so on, right? And to infinity. And you think, okay, these are all the numbers. So I start from 0 and I go up. What you are not told is that, no, there's another side to this story. There's another side to 0. So just like you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, there is a mirror image of these numbers on the other side of 0. And you could almost say that there is a certain amount of symmetry, kind of symmetry we have been talking about, we were talking about anyway, a little while ago. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's see here. One step to the right of 0, you will find 1, right? Of course. One step to the left of 0, you will find -1. So what does -1 mean? Well, that means 1 less than 0. One moment. And you might already be thinking, okay, well, what is 1 less than 0? What does that even mean? And we'll get to that. Next up, you could say that 2 steps to the right is 2. 2 steps to the left of 0 is -2. 3 steps to the right of 0 is 3, so 3 steps to the left of 0 is -3. Then 4 steps to the right of 0 is 4, so 4 steps to the left of 0 is -4. So you can see that it's almost as if there's a mirror between these two numbers that is separating them, right? And if you folded this half onto the other, the negative numbers would fall exactly on their opposite, on their positive selves, right? So -4 would fall on 4, -3 would fall on 3, -2 would fall on 2, -1 would fall on 1. And 0, of course, is in the middle. And it stands right between the two. 8, 0 separates the positive numbers, ones that we've known so far, from the negative numbers. Together, if I put all these numbers together, what I get is the group of numbers known as the integers. In Greek, that would be akere. Also, something I would like to point out about the positive numbers, the numbers that we already knew, is that if we wanted to, we could put a plus in front of them, in front of all of them, as a matter of fact. Just like the negative numbers have a minus in front of them, the positive numbers could have a plus in front of them. But we do not need to do that. If the number does not have a symbol in front of it, like these numbers do here, it is implied that it is a positive number, that it has a plus in front of it. So if you see, for example, 5 minus 3, it is implied that 5 is a positive number, that it has a plus in front of it, right? All right. So let's move on from that. All right, so already the question may have come across your mind. So what does it even mean to have a number that is less than 0? What is the point of that? What does that mean in the real world? And the example I want to give you is how we measure distance from the ground, right? So here I could ask you, how far is this plane from the ground? And you could say, okay, well, if you measured it, that would be 2,000. It would be 2,000 meters off the ground, right? And then I could ask you, how far is this hot air balloon? And you'd say, well, it's about 1,000 meters off the ground, right? If I asked you how far this person was off the ground, you'd say, well, since they're on the ground, they have no distance from the ground. That means they're 0 meters from the ground, right? So hopefully those would be your answers. But what if I told you about a person who dug a hole in the ground? So if the level of the ground is 0 meters, then where are they, right? They are below the ground. We can't say that they're at, let's say, 100 meters. No, because 100 meters would be somewhere around here, right? That would be above the ground. So we can't say that. They are below the ground. Well, how would we describe that? We would say they're at minus 100, right? Because they're below from 0. They're at less than 0. Let's give another example here. Another example that you have definitely seen in your everyday life is the thermometer. All right? So you've all seen a thermometer. I am absolutely certain about this. Well, the thing about the thermometer is, what exactly is the 0 on the thermometer? The 0 is the temperature at which water freezes. All right? And the temperature around us can be warmer or colder than that. Why is that temperature 0? Well, because we decided it so. When we wanted to create thermometers, we said, okay, what should we put at 0? Oh, I know, we should put the temperature at which water freezes, right? But the truth is that the temperature around us can be warmer than that and colder than that. If it's warmer than that, then it's above 0, right? So if it's 20 degrees, then that means that it's 20 degrees warmer than the temperature at which water freezes. But if it's minus 20, that means that it's 20 degrees colder than the temperature at which water freezes. It's 20 degrees below that, right? Okay. Another example is with money, right? So if we could have a person that has 10 euros, right? So great. We could have a person who has 0 euros. They have no money at all, unfortunately. And we have numbers to describe both those cases. But how would we describe the amount of money that a person has if they owe 10 euros to someone? So if I owe you 10 euros, how many euros do I have? You can't say 0. You can't say I have no money, because that would imply that if somebody else gave me 10 euros, then I would have 10 euros, right? But that's not the case, because if someone, and again, I owe you 10 euros, right? So if someone gives me 10 euros, then I should immediately give that money to you, which means that then I would have 0 amount of money, right? So how many euros do I have? I would write that I have minus 10 euros. And if someone gives me 10, and yes, here I am adding a positive and a negative number, then I would have 0. We're going to talk about how this works later, but these are some examples of where you can find positive and negative numbers in your everyday life. So we just answered the question, what are negative numbers? Let's talk about how we compare them. So basically, there are a few ways that you could go about this. We're going to talk about both of them. We're going to talk about two, basically. One that I like to show is to basically visualize the problem here. So here, let's say you have a ladder, right? So this is I have said that this step right here on the ladder is step 0. Why? Just because I wanted this to be step 0. Well, that would mean that this is step 1, and above that is step 2, and above that is step 3, and so on, right? But what about below this step? Well, below this step is -1, so 1 below 0. And below that is -2, so 2 below 0. And below that is -3, so 3 below 0. All right. Now, let's say I ask you, what is more, 2 or 3? Okay, well, this is an easy one. You can immediately tell me that 3 is more. But if you look at the ladder, what I'm asking you basically is, what is higher on this ladder? Is it 2 or is it 3? And you would say, well, of course it's 3, right? Let's put some more numbers on here, actually. Let's put 4 and 5 and 6. And then their negative counterparts. So -4, -5, and -6. All right, so now that we have our ladder with our numbers, let's see what's going on. We just talked about how we compare positive numbers. Well, we already know that. So another example, if I ask you what's more, 6 or 1? Well, you'd say obviously 6 is more than 1, right? But if we went to the ladder, and it would be like asking you what's higher on the ladder, 6 or 1? 6 is higher, so we say 6 is more. All right, but what if we bring negative numbers into the mix? I will now be using two images, and with these two images I will be symbolizing negative numbers in red, and I've put in a question mark to show that I don't know what number is hidden here, but this one is negative.
and the blue ones will be positive. Again, I don't know what positive number, but the blue ones are positive. So negative numbers and positive numbers. Now, we already know how to compare positive numbers with each other, right? So that's what we just did, comparing 2 with 3 and 6 with 1. That's how I compare positive to positive numbers. So this you already know. You already know this. Then we have the case where we're comparing negative to positive numbers or positive to negative. So here's a rule that you can follow. Any positive number and 0 will always be more than a negative number. Now let's explain why. Here, when we were comparing 2 with 3, we're basically asking what's higher on the ladder, 2 or 3? Well, 3. When we were comparing 6 with 1, we were basically saying, well, what's higher on the ladder, 1 or 6? 6 is the correct answer. Well, if I want you to compare a positive number, so pick any positive number you want, or 0, right? So any number that is above 0, right? And I want you to compare it with any negative number you want. They're always going to be above them. The positives will always be above them in the ladder, right? So since the positives will always be above any negative you want, then that means that a positive number will always be more than a negative number. So just think about it this way. In which case do you have more money? Do you have more money if you have €1 or if you owe €5? So 5 is more than 1, but it's better to have €1 than owe 5. And minus 5 is what that means. It's that you don't have 5. You are missing 5, right? You owe someone 5. 5 is down here, 1 is up here. So I could make this number, I could make the 5, I could change that into any other number I want. I could make it 50, I could make it 500, I could add however many zeros I want, or I could write random numbers, right? It doesn't matter. Because this number is negative, it will always be less than the positive number. No matter what this is, it will always be less than the positive number, or 0. So here's an idea that might seem a little odd. 0 is more than something else, which is kind of odd to think about because when you think of 0, you think of nothing. So you might think, okay, well, how can it be that I have more than someone else if I have nothing? Well, having nothing, again, in the money example, right? Having nothing means you have no money, whereas having minus something means that you owe money to someone, right? So that's even less than 0. So again, the rule is any positive number and 0 will always be more than a negative number, no matter what that negative number is or what the positive number is. All right, then we have the case of comparing, sorry, one moment. There's the case of comparing negative to negative numbers. So what happens when we're comparing negative to negative? So let's say I want to compare minus 3 with minus 5. Now your initial reaction, and I want to find which of these is greater, right? your initial reaction might say, okay, well, 5 is more than 3, right? So this is more. Well, no, actually, because minus 5 is lower on the ladder than minus 3. Minus 3 is higher than minus 5, which means that minus 3 is more. Again, with the money example, in which case do you have more money? If you are owing someone 3 euros, or if you're owing someone 5 euros? Well, in this case, since you owe more money, that means that you have less. All right, so you need to think about it like that. So if the number is closer to 0, that means it's greater. Another way to think about this would be to put all of this on the number line. So let's take a look at that. So if we go to the number line, we could say, okay, well, what was I just comparing? Minus 3 with minus 5. Generally speaking, if a number is more to the right, that means they are greater. So 3 is here, but 5 is here. 5 is greater, so I would say, for example, that 5 is greater than 3 because it is further to the right of the number line, right? And the same goes if I want to compare, say, 1. Let's say I want to compare 1 with 50. Well, 1 is right here, whereas 50 would be way off screen to the right. So again, the numbers that are further to the right are greater on this number line. Now let's say I want to compare minus 2 with minus 4. Which one is further to the right? That would be minus 2. So minus 2 is greater than minus 4. So let's try and put that into perspective here. We could say that the further to the right a number is, the greater it is, the bigger it is. And the further to the left they are, then the smaller they are. So that's how we compare numbers, positive and negative. Next up, we're going to talk about how to add and subtract with negative numbers, and that will be our final topic for the day, how we add and subtract them. And tomorrow we will be practicing some of that together. So if you don't understand exactly what's going on today, tomorrow you will see some examples of that. So there are many ways you can think about this because adding and subtracting with negative numbers is very intuitive. It's something that you have to have a bit of a feeling for it. But there's also a step-by-step way to show it. So first I'm going to show you the more intuitive way, and then I'm going to explain it the step-by-step way. And then you can choose which way you prefer to follow, basically. So let's say we have an addition in general. In that addition, let's say it's 8 plus 6. All right, well, what are we saying here? Actually, we're going to make it a smaller one so that it can fit. on the number line. Let's say we have 2 plus 3. What is this saying? It's basically, let's imagine the numbers as arrows, right? So let's imagine like this number line is a tug of war, right? And the numbers are pulling it to the right and to the left. And the positive numbers pull it to the right, whereas the negative numbers pull it to the left. 2, we said, is basically like saying plus 2. It's a negative number. It's a positive number, sorry. So what's going to happen here is when I have already 2, it's basically like saying I was at 0, but then I got 2. So I went from 0 to 2. And then plus 3 means that I am adding another 3. So 1, 2, 3. And I get to 5. Okay, well that's the addition that we know. We already know. But what if we put negative numbers into the mix? And here we got to 5. Right? What happens though if we're talking about negative numbers? So let's say I have 3 plus minus 4. All right? Well, what's happening now is I have 3 again. But now the minus 4, you need to think about it as if this is an arrow that is pulling me to the right. Then the minus 4 is another arrow, but this one is heading the other way because it's negative. And it's going to take me 4 steps back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to take me to minus 1. It starts from the point where my previous number ended, so that would be 3. And then it takes me 4 steps back. And where do I get to? I get to minus 1. So this is equal to minus 1. What if I am doing a subtraction, like let's say the one I wrote in the beginning, 2 minus 9? So here, again with the arrows, I start with a 2. And then we have minus 9, which means I need to draw another arrow that takes me 9 steps back. And since it's heading in the other direction, I'm going to make it red just to show it. So here, we're going to go 9 steps back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if we were to make the numbers here to get all the way here, since this is minus 4, this is minus 5, this is minus 6, this would be minus 7. So if you remember what I said in the beginning of the video, you could, if you had 2 markers and I asked you for 9, you could give me your 2, and then you'd owe me another 7. Now let's say that the negative number is up front. Let's say we have, for example, minus 1 plus 4. Okay, well, in this case, I would say that minus 1 means we've got to start from 0 and go 1 step back. And then plus 4 means we need to take 4 steps forward. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 steps forward. Where did we get? We got to 3. Next, what happens if, let's say, I'm subtracting a negative and a negative? So I have, let's say, -1, and I subtract, let's say, 3. So in this case, -1 means I need to take 1 step back, and then -3 means I need to take another 3 steps back. So 1, 2, 3, and I get to -4. What you need to keep in mind, though, is what happens if I have a case like this. Let's say I have 5 minus -2. Normally we should put parentheses here, but let's not make it super complicated. For the time being, let's say we have this 5 minus -2. So what's happening here is we need to subtract a negative number. Okay, this is where it gets a little complicated. What you need to keep in mind is that a minus, what it basically does is it flips around the whether or not the number is positive or negative. So right now we have here a negative number, right? So we're saying -2, but because it is -2, it is going to get flipped around to 5 plus 2. All right, and this makes 7. We already know that this makes 7. If I wanted to put this on the number line, what would happen is I'd say, well, 5 means I need to take 5 steps forward here, and then minus 2. If it was just -2, I'd say take 2 steps back, right? But actually, no, let's do like this. I'd say take 2 steps back. But because this is -2, what happens is that this gets flipped around so that it needs to be going ahead instead of going back because it's a minus. It's -2, so it becomes +2. And in the end, we get to 7. So again, this is a very intuitive way of trying to do addition and subtraction with negative numbers. Now I will be explaining to you the more step-by-step approach. And you can use, again, you can use whichever way you like. However, you can even not use either of the ways that I showed you. If something else works for you, you can do that. It's perfectly fine. Whatever way works for you best. So, the step-by-step approach. First, we're going to establish some rules. Rule number 1. And these rules are for adding and subtracting negative numbers. So, rule number 1. Adding a negative number is the same as subtracting a positive. Subtracting it's positive. Let's make this a little smaller so we can fit it all. So what do I mean by that? Let's say we have 9 plus minus 5. This is the same as doing 9 minus 5. Because in this case, I'm adding a negative number. Okay? And we're saying that that is the same as subtracting its positive. So in this case, it becomes just minus 5. So if you see this where we have plus minus 5, where what I want you to keep in mind is that when we are adding a negative number, that is the same as subtracting its positive. So in this case, if you see 9 plus minus 5, that is the same as saying 9 minus 5. All right? And that doesn't matter the number in front. So in front of the plus is a positive or negative. So it could be, for example, minus 3 plus minus 2. Right? We don't care that this is a negative number in front of here because this is a minus 2. What we care about is what we're talking about basically is what's going on after the first number. So from the plus and after. And we say, well, what we just said is that that is the same as saying minus 2 minus 2. Because what did we just do here? We said that plus minus 2, so adding a negative 2, is the same as subtracting a positive 2. All right. That's rule number 1, that adding a negative is the same as subtracting its positive. Rule number 2. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding its positive. So let's give an example of what this rule is saying. If I say 9 minus 5, that is equal to 9 plus 5, which is what we showed before. So here we are subtracting a negative number, and the rule says that that is the same as adding its positive. So the positive of minus 5 is just 5. So subtracting its negative is the same as just adding its positive. Let's put it in these terms, and you should be writing all of this down. You can see here that what we're saying is that when we are subtracting the negative form of this number, so in this case minus 5, that is the same as just adding its positive. All right, so that's what we did here. Now, again, what's in front of the minus does not matter. So let's say I have a negative number in front of that minus. Let's say I have minus 2 minus minus 3. Right? What did we just say? Subtracting a negative number is the same as adding its positive. The number in front of that minus, the number in front of this minus 2, will stay the same. So minus 2, but then after that, it's like the two minuses cancel each other out, and they leave as a plus. And then the 3. So minus the minus, right, like right here, gives us plus the positive. If you look, it's just the same as this, only the symbols here, the plus here has been put here, and the minus here has been put here. So try and remember these two rules right here. Next up, you're going to need to remember the 4 cases that we may find ourselves in when we are dealing with negative numbers, specifically with addition and subtraction. Case 1. In case 1, I have a positive number. I don't know how positive, it doesn't matter. And I am making it more positive. And again, I don't know how much. Let's see, it's already positive, and I'm making it more positive. So that's an example that you already know. So we might have, let's say 5, and we might be adding another 3. So we have a 5 that is positive, and I am adding another positive number. So I'm making it more positive, and I'm going to get 8. But because of the rules that we said before, which you need to remember, Rule 2 says that if I subtract a negative number, that's the same thing as adding positive. So I have another way of writing all of this. Instead of writing 5 plus 3 equals 8, you could find it written as 5 minus 3, which would be the same as 5 plus 3. Those two are the same thing. And this would, again, make 8. So in the case where I have a positive number and I'm making it more positive, it could be either that I'm just adding 2 positive numbers, or I have a positive and I am subtracting a negative. In this case, my result will always be positive. The result is always positive. The next case that we're going to look at is if I have a positive number again, I don't know how positive, and I am making it more negative. So I'm taking something away from it. I'm pulling it back. I'm pulling it towards the left. That's case number 2. So again, case number 2, I have a positive number and I am making it more negative. And the classic example that you know of this would be, let's say I have 8 minus 3, right? And you know how to do 8 minus 3 makes 5. Well, again, there's another way that we could write this based on what we learn about the rules. And that's these rules, that adding a negative number is the same as subtracting its positive, right? So plus a negative is the same as saying minus its positive. So this could also be written as 8 plus minus 3. And those two are the same. This is equal to 8 minus 3, right? And you might think, okay, well, this is going to be still, this is going to give me 5. So you might think, okay, well, so does that mean that in this case too, I can only get positive numbers? And the answer is no, because this is where we meet complications. Because let's say I have the number 4, right? if I subtract 4, that means I need to go 4 steps back. So I'm going to get 0, right? So 4 minus 4 will give me 0. So my result can also be 0. But what if from 4 I subtract a greater number? So we just did 4 minus 4, and that made 0. But what if I subtract a greater number than 4? What if I subtract, let's say, 7? That means I need to take 7 steps back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps back. I'm going to get to minus 3. So again, if I say 4 minus 7, it's going to give me minus 3. So in this case, in case number 2, results can be positive, negative, or 0. Again, this is the case where I have a positive number and it becomes more negative. Whereas case 1 was I have a positive number and it becomes more positive. In case number 3, I have a negative number and it becomes more positive. So this is basically the reverse of what we just did. So before we had a positive number and we went backwards. Now we're going to have a negative number and we're going to go forward. Let's say an example. Let's say I have minus 3 and I add 6. Minus 3 plus 6. That means that I start off from 0, I go to minus 3, because minus 3 is first. And then I'm going to need to go 6 steps forward. Since I'm moving forward, I'm going towards the positives. I'm taking the blue. Now, plus 6 means I need to go 6 steps forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I ended up at 3. So this is equal to 3. So as you can see here, my result was positive. But what if I had, let's say, minus 3 plus 1? If I had minus 3 plus 1, then I only would have needed to take 1 step forward. So from minus 3, I would have gone to just minus 2. So here I got a negative result. What if I had minus 3 plus 3? In this case, I would have been at minus 3 and I need to take 3 steps forward. So 1, 2, 3. And I would have ended up at 0. So here my result would have been 0. So as you can see, in case number 3 where I have a negative number and I make it more positive, I can again have results that can be positive, negative, or 0. In the last case, I have a negative number. In case number 4, I have a negative number, and I make it even more negative. In this example, let's say I start off with let's say minus 2, and I say minus another 3, right? Well, in this case, I would be starting off at minus 2, right? And then I said minus 3, which means I need to take another 3 steps back. 1, 2. Well, that went too far. 1, 2, 3. And then get to minus 5. So I'm already in the negatives, and I'm going even further into the negatives, which means, well, you can guess what. Now I just got to minus 5. But if I'm already in the negatives and I'm going further into the negatives, that means that my result will always be negative. Always negative. So here we had one case where our result is always positive. Here we had 2 cases where the results can be basically anything. Positive, negative, 0, anything we want. And 1 case where they're always negative. And again, there's more ways to write this. So we could have written this instead as minus 2 plus minus 3, for example. And then we'd go back to our rules. Oh, you can't see me now. Let's fix that. If we went back to our rules, you'd see that adding a negative is the same as subtracting its positive. So in this case, adding a negative 3 is the same as subtracting a 3, which is what we just did. So this would make minus 5 as well. And here, we could have also written this differently. We could have also said, instead of minus 3 plus 6, for example, we could have said minus 3 minus 6. And if you look at our rules from before, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So this should become minus 3 plus 6, which we already found to be just 3. All right. So now that that's done, I want us to discuss a little strategies, just a little bit. When I say strategy, what I mean is, what should you be thinking when you see a calculation that has negative numbers, right? So we're going to say strategies. Step number 1, ask yourself, what number am I starting with? Okay. Am I starting, again, you should be writing this down, with a positive or a negative number? Step number 2, am I making it more positive or negative? Basically, am I adding to it or subtracting from it? Am I pulling it more towards the right, towards the positives, or towards the left, towards the negatives? Okay. And this is after you apply the rules that we talked about, right? So if you just look at, let's say, 5 minus 2, and you say, oh, well, I'm subtracting. Well, yeah, you are subtracting, but you're subtracting a negative number, which we said is the same as adding. It's positive. So no, you're not subtracting, you are adding. So this is after you apply the rules. And then number 3, which is kind of optional, but it should give you an idea, is what case am I in from the ones that we showed before. So from these cases, which one are you in? And by finding out which one you're in, you can figure out if your result is going to be positive, negative, or maybe could be either, or 0 even. So again, these are the strategies which you should copy or have just an image of. These are the 4 cases, and these are the rules, the 2 rules for what to do with negative numbers. I know this was a long video, but again, this is a very complicated topic. So that'll be all for today. I will see you guys again tomorrow when we will be practicing all of this. Bye.